It's kind of cool music.
Yeah, so
Nice.
cool.
Well, thanks so much for coming to the panel. When I was asked to moderate for this panel, I thought about it, and I felt that pretty much tech can fix everything. Whenever there's a will, there's a way, right? But it seems like tech hasn't made that much progress in breaking, say, the glass ceiling, or to be a little bit more inclusive. What's your viewpoint on that? I'll start with Mada.
Sure. I actually think tech is ahead of many other industries, like finance, for example. So, in general, I think for sure the problem, in my opinion, starts earlier on when you think about education. So, if you think in tech, how many I went and studied computer engineering, and I think there were about 10% women in my class. And it did feel that actually, even when I look at my own startup, we're a very tech company, and we are 30% women, which is a lot higher than the percentage of women in my undergrad. So I think if we are to solve the problem of diversity in tech, it has to start from education. But I think when you think about the glass ceiling and how much women are paid, how many women are in tech, and the issues with tech, I think tech is one of the industries where there's a lot of open conversation about it. So we're actually ahead of many other industries, in my opinion.
So similar to you, like I started as an engineer, so half of my career was in enterprise software, the other half was consumer software. I guess I just hang out with too many guys like throughout my own career, and I don't necessarily seeing it as an issue. It's just sort of like we just build stuff, right? Regardless of whether men and women. But yeah, I love this industry and I enjoyed it. And every time I see any founder and CEO, I want to talk about like how do we actually figure out go-to-market strategy. And with brands, you've been like standing out there and talking to all your customers for the last 2 days, and it doesn't. To me, it doesn't really matter. But obviously, still in terms of the ratio, we also have 1/3 our staff are female actually, and now 2 out of our 3 managing partners, like Beji and Christine, are all women. And I mentioned earlier, I was actually preparing for your questions. A quarter of our, startups that we have funded, now over 1,700 startups now, no more 500 startups. And at least a quarter, 25% have like women as part of the founding team. So we want to support it and we wanted to see more. But I guess, started with being in engineering school. Just to start, there's like only 10% in your class were women. So in general, like engineers, there's just less women for good reason. So.
In terms of the ultimate investors, I know like in the traditional finance world, like there are funds that do ESG. Basically, they want the fund managers to invest in environmentally friendly stocks, companies, right? So do you see a trend like that in the tech industry, like the ultimate investors asking the VCs to invest in funds that have more diversity? Is there such trend coming on?
So we mean 500 startups.
Yes.
Started from 2 or 3 years ago. Actually, on Angel List, we have a women's syndicate. So we definitely want to invest more. And not only, we have funded a lot with women founding team. Rashmi, which is the CEO of SlideShare, which is sold to Linkshare. Wildfire, Victoria Ransom, sold to Google for $400 million. We actually have really, really good experience like with women CEO that we have funded, and we want to do more. I think obviously, I don't think like they're starting to have some like very women focused, more angel fund, less so for any PE or growth. But one of the things that I do want to like to focus on, which is I don't actually care. And by the way, with my own investment, I've done about 40 investments so far. 2 of my few best performing companies are both women CEO. Day Cook Norma, who's amazing, and also the Hook CEO, Perna, are just really, really great executives. And we want to do more.
And it goes both ways. I think it's also, the question should also be, when you look at a firm investing in you, I think as a woman founder, 2 of the seeds stage founders for us are funds that were founded by women, and I think that does make a difference as well.
So you think like investors, when they look at the startups with women founders, are they thinking, oops, she's going to go get pregnant and go home and have babies, or she's going to make the company more sane? Or they're just not thinking at all?
I want to believe, I want to believe that when we got funding, no one looked at me and looked at me differently because I was a woman, either on the positive or the negative side. I think, hopefully my career and everything I've achieved speaks for itself. So the fact that I'm a woman is not really part of the equation. That being said, I think, when it comes to diversity in our team, I bring things to the team that my co-founders don't have. I'm an extrovert, and I like going out there and talking about things, and I think a lot more about culture and making people happy. Are those things there because I'm a woman? Do I bring that value because I'm a woman? Maybe. I know I'm different, and because I'm different, I bring diversity to the team. But I don't think it's necessarily because I'm a woman, if that makes sense.
I think Marissa Mayer, during her tenure being a CEO for Yahoo, she had 2 kids. And she pretty much back at work within a week after she gave birth. Yeah. And I heard it, but don't quote me on it. I wasn't in Yahoo. They bring their kids to work. Yeah. So you make things work for you, which, and plus we have actually invested in a lot of B2C consumer internet. And I think particularly on consumer, women is actually the major buying decision maker for most internet. So we want to actually understand, regardless is men or women CEO, they understand their target market, right?
I will say, though, as an early startup founder of a high growth company, there are sacrifices you need to make as a woman. And it is very hard. For example, I gave up my dog because I was working 14 hours a day. And I can't imagine having kids at that stage. Now it's different. We're a little bit more later stage, and we have a bigger team. But as a woman founder of if you want to grow very fast, it's very hard to have it all, in my opinion. And you can try to make it work, but sometimes you can, and something's got to give. In my case, it was Sparky. He moved to Romania, but,
You made a very interesting point. It seems like the tech industry is all about speed, right? Like how fast you can hit certain milestones and how fast you can raise your valuations. So by definition, they're just not women. It's almost not suitable for a lot of women. For me, I know for sure I can do it at this point.
It depends on the industry you're in. I think there are a lot of businesses where speed is not as important. Branch is in mobile, it's a mobile infrastructure, and things move so fast. Google and Apple are changing standards all the time. And because of that, we can't be a lifestyle business. Like, we have a huge vision. There's so many other type of businesses that can move slower, where things are not moving as fast. So I don't think it's good to generalize. But in our case, yes, speed was incredibly important, and I think, there were sacrifices that we all made, my male co-founders as well, where we prioritize work over our personal lives for the first few years of the company.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take some Q&As from the audience. Any questions?
No question. Going once, going twice.
There are no questions?
They look really scared.
It does not have to be about diversity. It can be about anything.
It can be anything.
Raising money, building a team.
Yes.
A friend in front from Reuters.
Thanks for the disclaimer. So I came in a bit late. I'm sorry if you already covered this question, but I was interested in whether you think the situation for women founders and investors is any different in China versus in Silicon Valley.
I don't have as much experience here, so maybe Edith.
So I think that at least in general, like to start with, I never think about like I'm a woman or a man. I want to be a good investor, and the conversation was never really about that or that. But having said that, I do think that I do see more women investors in China, more than Silicon Valley. I don't know how to explain it, but I guess it's just something that happened more so. But in general, like I think the conversation that I have, regardless is with other women investor in Silicon Valley or women investor in China, the conversation we usually have is about, hey, what's going on with crazy Chinese valuation? How do you actually look at these deals in terms of B2B versus B2C? What are some of the metrics? It's not something that I usually focus on, but just my gut's telling me that I do see more. I have no idea why. Yeah.
I do have a follow-up question. Now we are going to move away from diversity. In China, a lot of it is relationships, 关系, the relationship you have with MIIT, with China Telecom. Whereas in Silicon Valley, I mean, relationship is very important, but no offense, a lot of the tech people have kind of a low EQ. They don't necessarily know how to deal with Washington. So how do you feel, Edith, like the Chinese entrepreneurs, do they have to be a little bit more politically savvy, more relationship driven than in the US?
I think that it depends on what you work on, right? On the China topic, I think if you work on anything that is search, social, news, yes, you definitely need to be aware of, in terms of government censorship, and you have to work with government really closely to address all this. And at least like my own portfolio, I would say at least majority of them are B2C. And when you are dealing with B2C, a lot of, with Branch, which help like figure it out on the mobile side, like analytics and all that, there's a lot of like ways in terms of using mobile ad network or like App Store SEO to drive consumer, and really it's not about relationship, it's about know-how how to drive mobile user acquisition. I do think that if it's B2B, for sure, like you have to not only building relationship with government, but also building relationship with a lot of enterprise. And you talk about earlier with telco, like if I'm doing any sort of preload, I have to work with the OEM. Definitely a lot of relationship that you just need to build, regardless you're US or China. I worked on a mobile browser before, and we definitely have done more of like the preloading type partnerships with Chinese OEM. In the US, just not as common of a practice, because if it's preload on a phone, most of these apps you don't use anyway. So we end up like for US user acquisition, it's a lot more straightforward, I guess, less partnership.
How do you feel about that, like relationship?
I think relationships are very important. I'm actually part of the App Developers Alliance, which is an organization in US that's focused on working with the government and thinking about how to think about app developers and better the future of app developers in general. So I think it is important even to think about how things can change from a specific climate. In our case, I look at someone like Google and everything that the way they are a monopoly, and I think they take full advantage of that. And I love that in places like Europe, they're being sued for it, and while in other places like US, they're not. So that's interesting. So I think thinking about your relationship with the government is important. I think Google has done a good job of that, for example. I think relationships outside of governments are incredibly important. I look at the way Branch has grown, and most of it has come from us building good relationships with customers that use us, and through word of mouth, they tell other developers about how much they love us. And part of that has been putting like good customer support. Our first value is partners first. We put them above everything else. So I think regardless of where you are, being consumer-centric and building great relationships with your partners is really crucial to succeed as an entrepreneur.
Cool. Any other questions from the audience?
I think they're really scared.
No?
Oh, there's-
Oh, there's one question here.
Hi. So we know that there's in a very diversified kind of environment in a company, most people see that they'll become more successful because there's various ideas coming from different diverse people, right? I'm just wondering what kind of what kind of challenge can you meet? You have to kind of to deal with in a very diversified environment, and what are the steps that you can take to kind of make it improve?
I think to build a diverse team, the biggest challenge is people tend to hire people that are like themselves. So one of the things that we've done is actually bias training, where we train everyone on how to interview and look for people that are different than themselves. Because the whole thing is, it's easier to get along with people like yourself. So when you have a team of homogeneous people, they get along really well. The problem is, it's harder to bring innovation out of teams that are homogeneous. But even, when I look at I lead the marketing team, and it's very different. People from different backgrounds. Some people didn't go to college. Some people did. Some people were born outside of the States. And, it's very hard to even pick a place for lunch, because this guy from Italy doesn't eat Asian food, and other people really want to go to the Thai place, and I don't eat pizza. It's like weird, right? Like, because we're so different from each other but because we're so different, it's easy to come up with cool ideas, but it's harder to reach consensus. Great ideas come, but consensus is harder to reach. So it's really important. We have this thing where we make everyone take this test that talks about their personality, and each of us have to go into the team and share the test. So for example, I don't like making small talk, and people didn't realize that. And once they realize, they stop feeling bad that I don't ask them about their day. So there's all these little things. This guy doesn't like brainstorming, so I never bring in brainstorming meetings. I send him the brainstorm sheet in advance, and I take his ideas. So it's really important to understand people. And once you understand them, that's kind of how you overcome teams that are very different from each other.
You realize diversity is not about men and women. It's about just have different people in the group. It could be age, it could be different race, and it could be from different country and culture and background. And I think for me, yesterday, Billy is a friend who started a young founder, brought about 20 kids. They're all teenagers. And I was asking them, hey, who used Snapchat? Who used Twitter? And no one used Twitter. I'm still shocked. And I realized if I ever build another team, I need to hire people who are super young, so then I get a better sense what's going on. And in fact, I think a lot of the more traditional businesses, not only about tech, a lot of my older friends who are public company on their board, there's no one is below 40 years old. So is that right? And they are scared because the new generation, their buying behavior will be different, and this is beyond just sort of gender diversity. Is age, and the world is your oyster. You need to know what's going on. Particularly, I'm from Hong Kong, right? A lot of people from Hong Kong are scared to go to China. You need to go talk to the taxi driver. Go talk to people who sell in the market and figure out what they're doing, and that's diversity. We need to do that, then we can build better companies.
I agree.
Yep. That was a good discussion. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.